Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sustaining Sustainability. I'm your host, CB Bhattacharya, professor and the Director for Sustainable Business at the University of Pittsburgh. This week, I'm joined by Carolina Lobato, Vice President of Legal at Kinross Brasil Mineração, based out of Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais, Brazil. Kinross Brasil is a subsidiary of the Kinross Gold Corporation, a Canadian-based gold and silver mining company founded in 1993 and headquartered in Toronto, Canada. Kinross was ranked fourth of the top 10 gold mining companies of 2017 by Invest News. The company's mines are located in Brazil, Ghana, Mauritania, Russia, and the United States. We've invited Carolina to join us this week to discuss the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the mining industry, the importance of engaging with community stakeholders, and the sustainability outlook for the company moving forward. Carolina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, CB. Thank you for the invite. I'm very happy to join you today.
So, Carolina, we are talking to people from around the world to help our audience understand COVID-19 from a global perspective. Can you give us a sense of what the situation is like in Brazil as a result of the global pandemic?
So we have today a total of 142,000 deaths. We are ranking on top of the list of the countries with the worst cases, worst scenario, actually. After August, actually, we have seen a positive trend. There is a reduction of 16% on new cases and 15% in new deaths.
I was curious to read that mining has been designated an essential service in Brazil. Could you describe the pandemic's impact on your workforce and business operations, especially as it relates to workplace safety?
Sure. So, yes, since the beginning of the crisis, the government issued a decree establishing which would be the industries that could keep working, mainly energy, gas, food related industry, agriculture, some of the base industry, which included mining. So, Kinross never had to really stop operating, and we never did. But what we did was we tried to reduce as much as possible number of people in site. So for our corporate office in Belo, we reduced 100% of administrative employees. But for the mine itself, we were able to reduce around 40% of people in the site. Other than that, we postponed some projects that would bring third parties to the site. So projects that didn't have to be concluded in 2020 were postponed for next year. And we created and implemented a number of new actions to prevent the disease spreading in the workplace. So, for example, we doubled the number of buses attending the site as we had to include safety distance inside the buses. We have implemented a system of meals in the cafeteria that is now a meal to go, so employees don't have to touch the serving items. We are measuring temperatures when arriving in the site. There is now a checklist that all the employees have to fill every day before going to work to make sure that they are doing the proper health assessment and are not going to work feeling any kind of symptom. We have increased sanitation in the public places and distributed masks for employees and families.
Now, Kinross Gold places a great deal of importance on community stakeholder engagement. What are some examples of ways your company has worked with local communities, particularly in these times, to create both economic opportunity and social benefits?
So, yes, you are absolutely right. For us, it's really important to have a good relationship with our local stakeholders. All of our mine sites follow a consistent approach based on like well-established management systems. So we have the same patterns around the globe. We want to ensure that local communities benefit from the presence of the mine. And we know that we are sometimes the biggest employer of the region, and we have a responsibility for that. So we like to make sure that we leave a positive legacy whenever we leave. Our biggest benefit comes through what we call benefit footprint, which is basically the impact of local jobs using local business and also the taxes that we pay. So in 2019, for example, across the globe, we had a benefit footprint of more than $3 billion. We know that we have a very modern operation, and it's hard to have employees in the city ready for that. So usually we do a lot of effort in building capacity for employment and for local business to attend us too. So this is something that we focus a lot on. In Paracatu, for example, here in Brazil, where is our mine, we have worked for years with local partners to train businesses so they can engage with us. And we have done the same with the youth, kids and youth that are being trained for having technical skill programs and being able to join our internship programs at the mine. But this is not everything, right? We also engage with the local communities to understand what other types of support we can give them to ensure development. So it depends on where we are working. So we have in Ghana, for example, a lot of focus on education infrastructure. We have in Russia a very big focus on indigenous people in the Arctic regions. And here in Brazil, for example, now with COVID, we have created the online platform for the schools to ensure that they were able to keep teaching their students during the crisis. So this is some of what we do. We also change as we see that the needs change too. So for COVID crisis, we have engaged a lot in Brazil with the authorities to make sure that they had the proper communication campaign to make sure that people were understanding and following social distancing, uses of masks, and other types of care that are needed. We also invested $250,000 in medical devices for the local hospital. So we provided tests to the local municipality as well, so to make sure that they were testing all the suspected cases and giving the proper publicity to the numbers of the city.
So moving to the environmental side of things, as you know, mining is notorious for its environmental impact. How does Kinross Gold manage its environmental impact?
Yeah, so we also have global standards which we implement in all of our sites. But specifically talking about Brazil, what I can tell you is that we do have a very well structured environmental law in Brazil. All the permitting process are previously analyzed and impact studies are provided to the authorities. For example, for each 1 hectare that you do the deforestation, you have to preserve 4 other hectares. So, giving one example in Brazil that we had recently, we permitted a new tailing dam, and the compensation for this implementation was a creation of a state park, which has more than 4,000 hectares of protected area, including some springs, which is fundamental for the region. This is out of a legal requirement, but we also increase whatever the law established so we are able to provide more. We provide a very integrated reclamation program for the areas that we don't use anymore. And when I say integrated, it's because we usually involve the community in the decision of what to do with the area in the future, what they need, and what is interesting for the region that we are operating.
So now putting the social and the environmental, all of it together brings me to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And it sounds like Kinross has done quite a bit of work kind of on incorporating the SDGs into its sustainability commitments. Could you briefly discuss why it is so crucial for transnational companies such as yours to commit to the SDGs?
As I mentioned, I think that international companies most of the times are one of the biggest employers of the regions that they operate, and this is very true for mining. We usually operate in very remote cities with very little structure. So we have the responsibility of bringing development wherever we are working. UN goals were thought to promote prosperity while protecting the planet. So this is aligned to all industrial activities, right? We want and we are willing to have profit, but we need to promote also development and protect countries that we are working on. So, one of the challenges that we face is that it's easier to talk about things or activities we do rather than results or outcomes that they generate. So, for community development, for example, we talk about supporting education or health or training, but it's not that common to see companies talking about social outcomes, right? The SDGs are important in this respect since they have universal language that express key targets for all the communities. So this means that we can express work we are doing in terms of outcomes or progress towards the SDGs.
So, as the world moves past COVID 19, many have noted that the social and economic hardship has only been a small glimpse at what could be if we do not act aggressively on climate change. Where do you see the mining industry fitting into this climate change battle?
CB, to be very transparent, for a while, I didn't see this type of discussions in the mining industry. This has changed, I would say, in the past 3 years. I have seen also an increase on this type of discussions during COVID. I think people are becoming, if I can say, more human. We had in 2020 a workshop in our company to have all the regions pointing out their top three challenges related to climate change. And an action plan will be developed especially for those. I think the environmental preoccupation and environmental responsibility that we already have always thought about impacts and whatever we were leaving behind when we left, right? But I think now the discussion is a little bit broader. When we talk about climate change, we're talking bigger. So I think this is a good trend in the industry. Like I said, a recent trend.
Carolina, we are coming to our end of our time. So, what is the most important message you want to convey to companies during the COVID 19 era?
I can say that if you are an industry, especially an international one, working in remote places, you have the responsibility to care for your employees and the community that you work for. I would say that we cannot think about our business as we used to think 5 years ago. If we just keep doing whatever we did 5 years ago, we will not be operating 5 years from now. So I think it's time to rethink, redesign, and reposition our companies in a more responsible way, thinking about the future.
Carolina Lobato, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. This is your host, CB Bhattacharya, signing off. Please join us next time for another edition of Sustaining Sustainability.
And before I sign off, I do want to say that this podcast is made possible by the help of my colleagues, Leslie Marshall, who's the Associate Director of the Center for Sustainable Business, and Alyssa Martinec, who is the Sustainability Coordinator of the Center for Sustainable Business. I'm your host, CB Bhattacharya. Bye-bye.